consumption always produces a waste product. What is the waste product of a consumed soul? And is it part soul? Is it just like less of the soul that was consumed? And what happens to it? And does it go anywhere? And does it affect the already warped warp?
Hey everyone, Future Noah here during the editing process, and before we get started with today's video, I just wanted to let you know that we recorded this video with the idea that we would release it once we got more information about Henry Cavill's Warhammer series. However, we have decided to release it a little bit earlier, so if you get references to something dropped recently or anything along those lines, that's the context. Nothing has been announced at the time of this video going live, but we had recorded it with that in mind. So just to let you know, to clear up any confusion, and enjoy the video.
Welcome to Pork Chops, Rice, and Peaches. I'm Richard.
And I'm Noah.
And we are delving into another fun episode of Millennial Explain Something to a Gen Xer.
This week, Warhammer 40,000. What do you know about Warhammer 40,000?
What do I know?
40K.
I have seen little snippets of Instagram reels and Facebook reels where Henry Cavill is talking about how he almost missed getting the phone call for Superman, that he got the role because he was playing Warhammer.
It was Warcraft.
Or Warcraft,
It was
okay.
Warcraft, which is different, but
So
I'm sure you've seen a bunch of reels about him talking about. Did you see the one where it was an interview for The Witcher, and they were like, what's one thing that you can't really explain to anyone on set? And he looks up at the chandelier and he goes, "That looks like a Blackstone fortress." Have you seen that one?
No, I haven't.
It's adorable.
Okay.
And it's something from Warhammer 40k.
Gotcha. All right. So we pretty much now have exhausted my knowledge of all of this. I know that he was in a series, some television series that he liked, and then he left because of creative differences. I hear he's going and doing something that he's passionate about.
Yep.
Doom. Tapped out. Done. That's all I know.
All right. So soon after Henry Cavill was released from The Witcher and the DCEU as Superman, he was contacted about doing a Warhammer 40k franchise for Amazon Prime, something that he is incredibly passionate about. There's the context for this. We're pre-recording this so that when any sort of trailer, teaser, or whatever drops, we're just going to drop this one there. So, hello from the past. How's the future? So, Warhammer 40k is a tabletop miniatures game.
Okay.
But it's not like D&D where we talked about that a few
Right.
weeks ago at the time of this recording. It's not a role-playing game. It is a war game. You have armies, and you fight other people's armies.
Like Risk?
More complicated than that, but yes.
Okay.
You have different units, and they have different abilities, and you can pull off different strategies using them, and the games are stupidly long. And people go into a lot of time painting the miniatures. Okay? Game. That's the backstory of the game.
Okay, so there's modeling.
Yeah, you get the miniatures, you put them together, and then you paint them, and that's a big part of it. But the thing about Warhammer 40k, which is actually a sequel to another game called Warhammer, which was more fantasy. Warhammer 40k is a franchise that's been going on for like 40 years-ish? Yeah, it's been around for a while. And there's a lot of lore to it. And if you're going to be seeing more about this potential series that Henry Cavill is supposedly showrunning or heading, then you might need a little bit of background. So I'm going to give a summary of the setting for him. So this franchise has so much lore. Again, entire YouTube channels are devoted to it. People like Westhammer, Major Kill, among tons of others. It has so much meat to it because they just write stories in the setting rather than there being one main continuous story that's ongoing. It's a grand scale across the entire Milky Way galaxy. So a lot of factions, a lot of storylines.
Literally across the Milky Way. I mean,
yes.
Are there different planets?
Is
there interstellar travel in this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So the context of the setting. Here we go. It takes place in the Milky Way galaxy, and there's a bunch of different factions. I'm going to go over the main ones, but really, the franchise story, the setting story, starts with robot mummies. So long ago, there was this race called the Necron tier that existed in the Milky Way. And the Necron tier evolved, grew, whatever, on a planet that was that was way too close to a very radioactive star. So their lifespans were shortened. They could only live about 40 years because of literal cancer that was happening because of it. Over time, they progressed and they advanced and they desperately made a mad rush to be able to colonize other planets, but the curse followed them. The curse. Basically, their DNA did not allow them to live past 40 years. They still had these issues. So despite getting away from that radioactive star, they were still plagued by the same issues. Until they ran into a omnipresent, omnipotent race of frog people known as the Old Ones. Which are... Yes. So what happens is you've got these creatures called the Old Ones. We actually don't know what they look like. Most drawings are of frog people, but they basically were this highly advanced race of beings, almost godlike, that would sow life across the galaxy. And they would create new races, and then they just let them see if they survived or not.
Is this the same race of frog people that Grogu tried eating one egg at a time, or is this a different...
I don't know.
Anyways.
So the Necron tier run into this race called the Old Ones, and they're like, hey, you guys have unlocked immortality, essentially. Can you help us? And the Old Ones were like, nah, fam, we good. Good luck.
Nice.
So, yeah, basically their answer was we do not interfere. They basically took the Star Trek Federation's
Prime Directive.
The Prime Directive.
Right.
We don't interfere with other
Right.
people's. Well, the Necron tier were like, well, we're about to make you interfere, and declared war on them. So the Necron tier go to war against the Old Ones. The Old Ones absolutely smoke them.
Okay.
Until the Necron tier discover a race of godlike beings known as the Star Children or Star Dragons. I am not a lore YouTuber. I just watch them, so I have the bare minimum to explain.
Okay.
They find this godlike being, Star Child thing, that basically promises them that he'll fix all their issues because he also hates the Old Ones. But in reality, he's lying. He just wants to enslave the Necron tier. But he creates a device and convinces all the leaders of the Necron tier to send their people into the device. Now, they were mortals, flesh and blood at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
They go into these machines, and they all of a sudden become these. They basically rip their souls out of their body and put them in mechanical bodies. They turn their souls into data and put them into these mechanical bodies, and the Necron tier become known as the Necrons. And yes, they have an Egyptian mummy theme to their society. So,
Okay.
undead mummy robots. Anyway, the Necron tier, along with their new
Are
allies,
they wrapped in fabric?
sometimes
Do they...
they
I'm
Go-
picturing Lon Chaney walking around.
yeah. They go back to war against the Old Ones, and the Old Ones realize, oh crap, they're more powerful now. They have super advanced weaponry for basically enslaving the race. This godlike star child did actually make the Necrons more powerful and powerful enough to fight the Old Ones. So the Old Ones start fighting a losing battle because they're getting attacked. So they create two new races. They create the Eldari, basically space elves, and they make the Orcs.
Oh,
Orcs.
Orcs. I know that name.
Orcs, spelled with a K though.
Oh, well, that's
Okay.
so much better.
So, the Eldari are gifted psychically. The main magic form in Warhammer is psychic abilities, otherwise known as psychers,
Mhm.
who have mental powers. Think like Jean Grey on a
Mhm.
magnitude cosmic. And then the Orcs are just straight up brawlers and bruisers. So the Old Ones create these races to fight on their behalf, and they actually start winning. The problem is they did that too late, and most of the Old Ones were wiped out. The rest of them fled and left the Eldari, and the Orcs to finish the fight. The Necrons, realizing that they may have been powerful enough to stop the Old Ones, they cannot stop both the Eldari and the Orcs at the same time. So they decide to put themselves into hibernation for like a billion years. So they go to these tombs that are pyramid shaped, because of course they are,
Right.
and they sleep for millions of years. And that leaves the Eldari and the Orcs as the supreme races in the galaxy. Well, the Orcs F off and just basically regress into barbarians over millions of years, and that leaves the Eldari to rule the galaxy. So these space elves are now ruling the galaxy, and if you didn't think this was stupid enough,
You can
It's-
read my mind.
it's about to get even weirder.
Okay, so hang on. Before you go in more the backstory, we're talking about not a role playing game like Dungeons and Dragons.
Nope.
You're talking about a board game where you're doing strategy and okay.
With armies.
Where does all of this background information storyline come in, and why is it necessary for playing the game?
So for playing the game, you get heroes, like big hero characters that can like lead your armies. As
Okay.
far as I'm aware, I've never truly played the game,
All
but
right.
they give supplementary information about all these factions. So essentially what it is you've got all these different factions. You can play as everyone that I've mentioned so far. You can play as the Necrons, you can play as the Eldar, you can play as the Orcs, and all the rest of them that I'm going to name here in a little bit. So they give them this fleshed out backstory.
Okay.
And then they make novels, they make video games, they've made short films about all these factions, and they've done a lot. And they've everything from like action books about like gigantic battles to a lot of cosmic horror. There's a lot of horror written in there, and it's kind of the perfect setting for it. You'll find out.
Did you say books?
Books, novels, plural.
Oh, okay. So this is expanded beyond
Yes, just the game.
board gaming. Where we've got novels, we've got
Yes.
storyline. Okay, all
And
right.
that's why we're getting a TV series about it too.
We're getting a
because
TV series about it because it hasn't been done before. Because people are big fans of the franchise,
Yep.
and because the entertainment industry is desperate for something new.
Yeah.
So here's the big question. Are they going to give this something new without retreading tired old storylines?
We'll have to find out.
Because that's going to because the people who are going to be writing these are limited. I mean, how many years ago did some famous Greek guy say all stories have already been told?
Mm-hmm.
I should probably know that, and I've long since forgotten who it is. You know. He was right. Can they
Yeah.
Can they do something new with this?
We'll find out.
All right, I digress. Go ahead, continue with your.
Well, where we left off, the Eldar were the supreme race. This turned out to be a gigantic mistake.
Okay.
So, the thing about the Eldar is they were practically immortal. Okay, their souls were practically immortal. Now, there's something to deviate, something very important that I haven't covered until now. In the Warhammer universe, you have the mortal plane of existence, like the Milky Way, you know, planet Earth, all the stars, all the solar systems, all that. And then you have a parallel universe called the Warp.
Well, it always helps to have a parallel universe.
And the parallel universe is essentially a shadow of the mortal plane. And it is fueled by the emotions of the mortal plane. So, the Warp was kind of a peaceful place for the most part. Alright? But when you get massive conflict and massive issues on a galactic scale, it starts to twist the Warp. And when a lot of souls, because that's where souls go after they die. When a lot of souls go there after a torturous existence, it starts to twist the Warp into something evil. Now, that war that I was explaining to you was not an isolated thing. It was called the War in Heaven between the Necrons and the Old Ones, because it literally was waged across the entire galaxy. We're talking trillions of innocents were slaughtered in the process. So the Warp went from being this relatively peaceful place to literal hell over the span of a few million years because of this gigantic war that raged across the entire galaxy, and it created a few beings known as the Chaos Gods, demonic entities that represent some aspect of reality, and they manifested in the Warp. Now, there were three. Before this point, there were three, and you're gonna hate these names because they're so stupid. So you had Khorne, god of blood and skulls. You had...
Spelled with a K?
Yes.
Okay.
You had...
Orc, Khorne,
Yeah.
you know.
You had Nurgle, the grandfather of disease and pestilence.
Nurgle. It sounds like
Yeah.
something Luna Lovegood was searching for in the fields of
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
And this one always gets me. Tit Snitch.
Okay.
That one actually is pride, envy, conniving, whatever. He's kind of like a Loki almost. Kind of. Don't get on me. He's a plotter. He's a schemer.
A schemer.
But there was a fourth. But that one didn't manifest until a little while later. So back to the Eldar. Immortal beings that ruled over the galaxy. Okay? Well, the Eldar create technology. They advance their civilization. They make utopia. And then they realize that they've kind of got nothing to do. So they start devoting themselves to the arts, culture, music. But then they realize we're immortal. And when you do something, you go to one thing for your entertainment, for your art, for so long, it kind of loses its magic. Right? You can't read the same book over and over again before you kind of get bored with it and seek out something new.
Over millennia.
Over millennia. So, progressively, through the millennia, they became very, how do you say, hedonistic and demented.
I had a feeling that's where you were going.
And Sodom and Gomorrah type stuff.
Right. Okay,
Right?
yeah,
Like,
I gotcha.
and literally the most depraved things you can think of. Yeah, they were worse. It's how it's always been described. They were ruthless in how they sought out pleasure and ecstasy, and it became more and more deranged over the millennia. Well,
a society that lives in abundance that starts turning towards depravity and trying to normalize it. Where are we seeing this?
Well, because of all the torture that was going on and all the depravity, it eventually caused another ripple in the warp. And it started manifesting as the fourth chaos god, Slaanesh. And after several million years, Slaanesh was born, and its birth scream basically wiped out 90% of the Eldar.
Damn.
And then, all those Eldar souls, well, Slaanesh devoured them. So now the Eldar are stuck because if they die and they can't be resurrected, Slaanesh is going to eat their souls. Well, that's what happened there. So now we have 4 Chaos Gods in the warp, the Eldar mostly wiped out, and this is where humanity comes in. And we have to go down a whole new rabbit hole for that.
So, there's an obvious question hanging here. Slaanesh eats their souls. Eating. Consumption always produces a waste product. What is the waste product of a consumed soul? And is it part soul? Is it just like less of the soul that was consumed? And what happens to it? And does it go anywhere? And does it affect the already warped warp?
I'm glad you're following.
You know, I'm just wondering if there's like this new generation of beings coming up called the Turds that are just going to, like wreak havoc on the community. There's a whole lot of jokes I could go with, but I'm just going to let it go with that. Because, all right, I'm listening to all this.
Yeah.
I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm tracking it. I take notes. I follow this. The thing that, oh my goodness, can you play the game and enjoy it without knowing all of this stuff? Okay, that's number one. So with all of this world building that's taking place, and this is world building, and I get it. I mean, so my, all of my jokes in the past about I hate the phrase world building. I get it. I understand where this is all going. As long as you can play the game without knowing this stuff, that's fine.
Yeah.
When this eventually gets produced into a television series or a movie or a series of movies, is it going to be so well written that you don't need to know this backstory to be able to enjoy the product?
That is a good question.
That's the key.
We will need to,
because if it's a good movie, if it's a good television series, it has to stand on its own with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And for people like me, we can't be walking in and not understanding because we don't have all the background information.
Yep.
This goes back to that. This is the nature of storytelling changed, right? So there's that. And then I'm listening to you talk here, and you partially answered my question. If you obtained immortality, would you help other people achieve it, or would you keep it for yourself? And what are the consequences of both? Okay, it just kind of crossed my mind because I think that the hope for immortality, and some people think we're striving for immortality, I think it's a misplaced hope. If you follow it to its logical conclusion, I don't want to be alive on the planet when the sun eventually explodes. Right? And if you're immortal, you're going to be around for that. And there's going to be a high degree of suck after that takes place. All right. Living an extra 80 years in a healthy body, healthy mind. Yeah, I could see that. That could be cool.
Yeah.
Immortality? No.
Yep.
Anyways, I digress.
No, you're good. Hey, the breaks are good.
You know?
The humanity. That poses the question, where does humanity fall into all this, right? Right?
Well, I was wondering if Earth and humanity even existed in this universe.
Well, it does.
Oh.
And guess how they turned out?
Well, I've seen how humanity has turned out. Is it much better?
Gothic fascists.
What is it?
Gothic fascists.
Gothic fascists.
That worship basically a dead body. Oh yeah, let's do it. Okay, so to start with humanity.
Is this a rip on Christianity?
No.
Okay.
I guess it depends on how you
look at it.
Okay. It could be if you read it
All
that
right.
way, but let's
Obi-Wan
let
from
me
a
explain-
certain point of view.
Let me explain it. So, millions of years ago, there was a bunch of shaman living on Earth.
Okay.
Well, these shaman were technically not normal humans. They were something known as a perpetual. A perpetual is a being that dies, and when he dies or she dies, gets reincarnated into a new body, and eventually when they grow up, they learn
Phoenix?
kind of.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a bunch of these shaman realized that for some reason humanity was on a path doomed, and they would need a solitary figure to lead them in the future. So they commit mass Sudoku.
They played math games?
No, I'm not allowed to say the seppuku. They bashed themselves with a rock. And basically what they did, they committed mass killed themselves.
Okay. Suicide. Mass
Yeah.
suicide. All right.
And did a ritual with that so that they would all their consciousnesses and souls would be reborn into one body.
All the
And-
shaman did
yes.
this. Okay.
And this was back in like caveman times. So,
And their name was the Borg.
yeah, maybe.
You will be assimilated.
So, this new perpetual gets born. And, by the time he's 13, 14, he's realizing he's not like everyone else around him. He's got higher capabilities of thinking. So he decides, you know what, I'm going to have to go lead humanity in the future, but he's got these massive psychic powers. He can kind of see the future a little bit, so he goes and he F's off for millions of years because he's like, humanity's not ready yet.
He's 13. He wants to get laid.
Probably.
Okay.
So, humanity proceeds along the path that we do, for the most part. It's said that this perpetual man would pop in every now and then, maybe as a significant historical figure, and then dip out just to steer humanity on the correct path, but never making his presence truly known. Well, humanity gets to the spacefaring age. They colonize the moon. They colonize Mars. They set out and they start colonizing other planets. They create artificial intelligence and these items called STCs, standard construct, or STCs, standard template construct. And basically, they're kind of getting where the Eldar are, but not quite there yet. They're not immortal, but they have this advanced technology that allows them to colonize other solar systems. They can go faster than light. Well, eventually, the AI rises up against them. And humanity is forced to fight the AI. And eventually, they win. But around the same time, Slaanesh is born. And that creates a whole issue because the warp was actually the way of traveling faster than light. And what happened when Slaanesh was born is that warp storms were created and a lot of the pathways through the warp were cut off. So all of a sudden you have humanity that has spread out across the stars and is now cut off from each other.
Here I was thinking humanity came after Slaanesh was born, and then we
Nope.
go back to my earlier question. I thought that's what humanity was, but
Nope.
okay.
So around this time, all the planets are cut off from each other. And the problem is that a lot of the planets were reliant on each other and the trade routes. So Earth devolves into techno-barbarism. It goes back to barbarianism. It's like Mad Max across the planet. So you have this hellscape. And this is when the God Emperor of mankind steps in. That guy I mentioned earlier who effed off for millions of years, yeah, well, he's back. And now he's got super soldiers that he has been genetically modifying. And he conquers the Earth. And then decides that the super soldiers that he had weren't super enough, so he mass kills them all and creates better ones.
Okay, all right. Before we go down this rabbit hole any farther, because I think I've hit my saturation point, this goes well beyond a board game.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we're talking about a board game, are we talking about you can set up and you can play any one of these scenarios from any one of these points in time with any one of these planetary battles?
Kind of.
Or is this like predetermined storylines that you have to set up and fight in? And then so it almost sounds like you have two entirely different, I don't want to say franchises, but you have this fictional world that's being built through novelization.
Yep.
And then you have a board game.
Yep.
That's a strategy war game.
Yep.
How do they cross? How do they meld?
So the factions that I've all mentioned are all playable in the board game.
Okay.
And this is just the setting for the game. That's it. That's all it is. Kind of like how the
setting for the game.
This is this is the world it takes place
all right.
in. That's
all
it.
right.
And then you get your supplementary if you want to read about certain characters. You get that. If you want to read about certain events that happened, major battles that did happen, you can read about that. If you want to learn about whatever, you can read about that.
I'm trying to figure out how I've gotten through the last 40 years of life without ever hearing about any of this at all.
Have you ever seen these guys before?
No.
So that is a Space Marine. Those are the poster boys of the franchise. And this is what the God Emperor of mankind made when he set about reuniting humanity.
How old is this picture? I mean, this looks like Moff Gideon's
this is
battle droids.
I know. This has been the design for years.
Really?
Since like the 80s. Now, they've gone through several changes and different types, but yeah, that is a 8-foot to 9-foot tall, roided up super soldier.
Oh, there's a person in there?
Yeah, there's a person in there.
Why do they have red eyes?
Because that's a helmet.
Okie dokie. Kind of like Daredevil.
Kind of.
Okay.
Yep. That is humanity's main fighting force. Like, in reality.
Semper Fi.
Pretty much. They are stupidly overpowered. They use over-the-top weapons such as chain swords, literally a chainsaw sword, bolter guns which fire 70mm rounds.
Chainsaw sword. Interesting.
Yep.
You could do a lot of damage with that.
Mm-hmm. They have a bunch of extra organs that have been implanted in them and grown. Like
duplicate heart, duplicate kidney.
Extra heart, extra lungs, extra adrenaline glands. Yeah. And this is what
massive biceps.
Yep.
Okay.
This is what that emperor was making, so that he could go out and reunite humanity.
All right. So not to like cut you short here, as I'm glancing at the clock just a little bit.
Oh, we overran on one piece. We're overrunning on this one.
Okay, I'll stop interrupting. This. Hey, all of you.
I'm actually not that far from the end. Actually.
All of you Gen Xers who really like this, or the Millennials rather, I'm at my saturation point. The sponge is full.
Well, there's not much left.
All right, well, go ahead.
He makes these, so that guy that went into hiding and was hidden throughout humanity's history, comes back as the God Emperor of mankind. And in this sense, he actually, this is where it gets ironic, he actually tried to eliminate religion from humanity because he wanted them to follow the purely scientific path. Now, he kind of succeeds in this, but he sets about afterwards going out and finding all the lost human civilizations from when the humanity was spread out. So he sets about on that. Now, before he had done that, he created Primarchs. Basically, he took his DNA, spliced it into like some embryos, and made even more powerful super soldiers known as the Primarchs that were technically his sons. So he makes the Primarchs, and one of the scientists that worked on them thought that, oh, I don't want them to be used just for warfare. So she shot them off into space, and he had to spend years going and finding them.
Of course she did.
Yes. Now, one of these Primarchs is really important because there's like 12 of them more. And one of them, though, is important. His name was Horus. Now, this is the big thing that happens in Warhammer because, mind you, it's called Warhammer 40k. The current setting is the 41st Millennium. And all this is taking place before that. So, the Emperor of Mankind goes out, starts finding his Primarchs. Horus becomes like his favorite, blah, blah, blah. Well, eventually, some of the Primarchs are like, oh, you know what, we actually don't like Dad that much, and he's kind of a dick, and we don't want to do this anymore. So they end up corrupting Horus, his golden boy, and Horus turns against him in an event known as the Horus Heresy. Yep.
The Horus Heresy.
Yep.
Okay, keep going.
Well, he basically takes several Primarchs, all their legions of Space Marines, and has the galaxy's largest temper tantrum.
The Horus Heresy. Oh my God.
And he rebels against his dad, goes and attacks Earth, and fights his dad. And the Emperor of Mankind is like, I really don't want to do this, but when he realizes that his son can't be swayed back, he decides to end the fight. Now, in the process, he had been holding back in the fight, and Horus had gotten a few good hits in on him. And when he obliterates Horus, leaving nothing, like just absolutely obliterates him, soul and all, the Emperor is mortally wounded and he's going to die.
Because as many dads have said, I'll end you and make another one just like you.
Well, he couldn't because he was mortally wounded. And he was placed on this object known as the Golden Throne. Now, the Golden Throne was a part of a bigger project that he was planning that I'm not going to get into. But the gist of it is that he could only...
Who thought that was a good name? The Golden Throne.
I know, right?
Honest to goodness. Do people think?
Nope. The only issue is that the only thing the Golden Throne, the only thing that matters is the Golden Throne was the only thing that could keep him alive.
Okay.
And his servants put him on the Golden Throne. They hook him up to the life support. And essentially, he becomes a corpse, but his soul is stuck in the body and it's still powerful. Well, over the millennia that follow, people start to worship him as the God Emperor of mankind, and instead of advancing as a race, they get stuck where they were technologically.
This is the whole thing you said 20 minutes ago, they're worshiping a dead body?
Yes.
Wow.
And which is ironic because he tried to eliminate
Religion.
He didn't want to be worshipped.
Right.
So he's kind of stuck in that sense. But yes, no.
On the throne.
Humanity, the Imperium, is now they're known. Mm-hmm. Is a bunch of fascists, dead body worshipping Gothic.
War black, dark eyeliner, dark nail polish.
No, Gothic as in like, hold on. I'm going to show you. Imperium ships. Architecture-wise.
Well, that's kind of cool.
Isn't it?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
actually kind of, I like
There's
that.
a lot of really cool artwork and stuff that comes with it.
I
yeah.
believe it.
So
That's
you see that?
good.
Yep.
Somebody's imagination on overdrive. That was
Yep.
nicely done. Okay.
So that is where humanity is, and they eventually still through just brute force become like one of the most powerful factions.
So when we pick up on this and this becomes a production, where in this storyline are we?
Right where I just ended it.
Okay.
Humanity is going to be this, again, Gothic, fascist, dead body worshipping imperium of mankind that is spread across the stars and living in this hellish landscape, fighting all these other factions.
There's going to be other humans that don't worship this.
Yep. Some of them worship those chaos gods that I mentioned earlier.
Right.
There's a ton of other threats that are out there.
Gotcha.
There's the Tyranids, which are basically eldritch horror monstrosities
Okay.
that are hive-minded creatures that devour biomass and use it to create more of them, and their goal is to purge the galaxy of flesh and blood and everything like that, biomass, so that they can consume and grow ever stronger. The Necrons came back. Their alarm clock woke them up, and now they're fighting everyone.
Okay.
There's a new race called the Tau, which are blue space cow communists.
Space cow communists.
Yep. The Eldar have split into several factions. They're back. The Orcs have come back, and they're the funniest people in the galaxy.
Space cow communists. I'm wondering, where is the political commentary in that? I'll have to think about that one for a while, because you know there's got to be some behind that. So here's my big question, folks, and truly, I'm gonna want the comments on this one.
Yep.
How did he do?
Yeah.
because
this is a bare bones. I'd
imagine.
I am not a lore person.
Right.
I do enjoy listening to videos about the lore, because what they have is a universe where they can tell so many different kinds of stories.
Sure.
So they can create all these different things. But the main focus of the setting is that all these different factions are at war
with each
and
other.
the one quote that sums up Warhammer 40k and its setting: in the dark, distant future of the 41st millennium, there exists only war.
That's ugly.
Yeah.
That is
And I
ugly.
know that this has been goofy, and a lot of this is intentionally goofy.
Okay.
Those orcs, they are brutes, but they're also a fungus. When they die, they release spores, which grow into the ground and make more orcs. And they also have the stupidest, most overpowered ability. If enough of them collectively believe that something to be true, it becomes true. They paint their cars red because they believe it makes them go faster. And because they believe it, their cars go faster.
It sounds like the cat who walked through walls. He walked through walls because nobody told him he couldn't.
Yep. Their spaceships don't have working engines, but because they believe that they can go through space and stay together and travel faster than the speed of light, they can. Yep. Okay. A lot of it is intentionally over the top for goofiness sake, because a lot of the stories also are grimdark. And that's where the term has been coined, is in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Okay. It is the grim dark.
Okay.
It is a horrific, it is a bleak and cynical look.
It's a dystopian future.
It's a dystopian future.
Okay. So ultimately, when this thing comes out into production, is the writing? I'm old. I'm stuck in my ways.
Yeah.
Is the writing good?
Yeah.
Are the storylines compelling?
Yeah.
Are the characters compelling? Do they grow? Do we care for them? Is it an entertaining package? I'm willing to give it a try.
Mhm.
There is, holy cow! I took a lot of notes here just to try and track all of this stuff.
Yep. And it literally just barely scratched the surface.
Oh, I believe it.
Of this.
I believe
of
it.
this franchise, because they've got the freedom to tell as many different stories as they want, because they've
sure.
got such a big. They're playing with the galaxy and 9-ish separate factions that you can play in the game. You can play as the Tyranids. You can play as the Orcs. You can play as the Tau. You can play as any faction of the Eldar. You can play as the Imperium.
Do you have to make and paint the little things in order to play?
I don't know if you technically have to, but most people do. And that's what Henry Cavill does when he talks about painting the miniatures.
Okay.
That's what he loves to do. He loves to paint the miniatures. And
You could have worse hobbies in life.
you could.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Wow.
Warhammer 40k.
I
A
had-
brief glimpse
Yeah.
into this franchise just to show you how over the top it is.
I had absolutely no idea what I was in for when I sat down for this one. We didn't talk about it.
Nope.
We didn't anything. I mean, there has been no hint as to what's going on.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Hey, Millennial explains Warhammer 40k to his Gen X dad. Do you have any other topics that I should try to explain to Dad?
And, did he miss anything?
Yeah.
Or did he
what
pretty
I-
much get it?
What did I miss?
Yep.
Obviously, I'm not going to be 100% accurate, but, did I get the general gist of it correct?
Yep.
Please tell
What
me.
do I need? What do I need to know? Did he leave anything out?
Let me know what other topics I should explain to him in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and make sure you hit that subscribe button for more.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Wow.
I told you.
Wow.
I told you.
That was
And
a,
actually,
that was a lot. You hit, what did we hit? 43. That's
40,
about
44, 45, about the same as the
the
One
same
Piece.
as the One Piece. Yeah. I didn't know if you were tracking the time on it
I
or
was.
not. Okay, but yeah. Holy smokes, that was.
I mean, really, after I got through explaining humanity, there really wasn't much besides mentioning the other ones.
Right. That's pretty complicated.
It's a lot. It's a lot.